Well, that's been a great little motor sail across to Sea Hill. Probably averaged about 6.5 knots, 7 knots, doing 7 a lot of the time. But we're going to come up into the wind now, so I'll get rid of the sail and we'll make our way up into the Narrows. Dark night tonight, so this trip through the Narrow will be on instruments and lights, but at least there's not much wind, the weather's pretty kind, so that's good. I think this is about as far as we're going to be able to get up before we get a bit of water. It's still quite a few banks out here, so I'll get up around here, I'll get into 3 or 4 metres and I'll drop the pick and then we'll just wait for the tide, I guess. But I think we might have to wait a couple of hours. Still got 7.6 under us here, but I think it's going to get shallow in a minute. Well, we've anchored in about 2 metres of water. I can see the leads heading into the cattle crossing from here, but it's just a bit too shallow, I think, so we're just going to hang here for, I suppose, about an hour and a half and wait for this tide to run in a bit, and then we'll have a bit of a shot at getting through. Probably not that much good going too early, because if you do, you're going to push an awful lot of tide on the other side of the crossing, so it's worthwhile waiting, resting for an hour or two maybe, and yeah, I might have a cup of tea and a bit of lunch now, and we'll have a look at it when there's a bit more water. Something you want to be careful of, the cattle crossing too, there's a fair bit of rock in there, so it's not all mud. There's quite a few rocky areas, so you don't want to be pushing it too hard, because you could come to grief, and I definitely don't want to run my props over any rocks, so I'd rather just wait for a little bit of water. Well, I tried to fly the drone, but it's just too windy. It's a lovely little lightweight drone, but it doesn't like the wind very much, and I reckon it's puffing about 20-25 knots, so I just can't get it away from the boat. So we'll have to do that some other time, I guess. Unfortunate, but once again the weather takes control. Coming up on the cattle crossing just now, and this is all we've got to go by. We're just following that track very closely. See, the bottom here is quite rough, and not a good place to be if the tide's too low. There are leads leading us through here. Just crossing from a set of front leads to some back leads here, and we'll keep this starboard lateral, the green one, we'll keep that on the pond side, because we're heading in the opposite way to the direction of voyage, so we've got to leave that go on our port side.
terminate 2, over. No response, standing by.
Deep water, so we're across the cattle crossing, and navigation becomes a little bit more easy, but very hard doing it on a night like this with no moon and no reference. So I've just been studying the chart pretty closely. I've hand steered most of the way through. I've been doing a fair bit of hand steering, and yeah, it's good to be across that shoaly area. We got down to 1.9 at one stage, but better off doing it now with a really high tide. All of the beacons so far have been lit. There's been none that we've passed that haven't had a light on them, so that's all good. But if you're going to do this at night, probably pick a full moon night when you can see a little bit, because it's really hard in amongst the mangroves to get a reference point.
Station call rear terminate 2, over. No response.
So back into deep water now, and the lights of Gladstone visible in the distance. Port lateral mark, it's called the Black Swan, and this is the start of the deep water as you head back down to Gladstone, or the start of the shallow water if you're heading towards the cattle crossing. So this is where you've got to really start your navigation from. Good for us. From here it's all pretty deep. Just contacted Gladstone VTS, and there doesn't seem to be any shipping for another couple of hours, which will give us time to get down to the marina in good time. So it's been a pretty uneventful trip. Well, it's about 20 to 2 in the morning. It's bloody freezing, and we're just entering the marina at Gladstone. So that's been a pretty long day, but all went well.